In the hills east of Beirut, there is a block of stone that nobody has ever managed to move. It has lain in the same limestone quarry for roughly 2,000 years, half cut from the bedrock, as if the workers simply put down their tools one afternoon and never came back. It weighs an estimated 1,650 tons, heavier than 4 fully loaded jumbo jets, heavier than the Eiffel Tower's iron frame, and it is not even the largest stone the ancient builders of Baalbek managed to shape. Nearby, 3 other blocks of similar scale were somehow cut, finished, lifted, and installed into a wall that still stands today, 20 meters off the ground, fitted with a precision that makes a knife blade impossible to slide between the joints. No known ancient crane could have lifted a block of that weight, and moving it with modern equipment would require machinery engineered specifically for the task. And yet, someone did it, apparently without leaving behind a single written explanation of how. That contradiction is the heart of this story, because Baalbek is not an isolated curiosity. It's one entry in a much longer, stranger list, a scattering of ancient achievements on different continents, in different centuries, that modern engineers still argue about. By the end of this film, you'll see the technique that may best explain how something this heavy could have been moved at all. The discovery that forced historians to rethink just how advanced ancient engineering could be, and why the real mystery here was never about ropes and ramps. It's about how much human ingenuity gets erased, and what that says about the limits of our own certainty. Stand next to the Stone of the South, as archaeologists now call it, and the scale stops making sense. It is over 19 meters long, 6 meters wide, and more than 5 meters thick, an unbroken slab of solid limestone, still attached to the ground along one edge, as though the mountain itself is reluctant to let it go. A short distance away sits its slightly smaller sibling, the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighing close to 1,000 tons, which local guides have shown to visitors for centuries, and uphill from both, already installed into the podium of a Roman temple, are 3 more giants known collectively as the Trilithon. Each block around 800 tons, set into a wall built, according to the archaeological consensus, sometime in the 1st century BCE, likely reusing an older sacred site. To put that in perspective, a fully grown blue whale, the largest animal to have ever lived, weighs somewhere around 150 tons. The stones at Baalbek are, in effect, several whales of solid rock, quarried, dressed square, and moved uphill over land, without a single documented sentence describing the method. So how do you move something like that? The honest answer is that no ancient text spells it out. No Roman engineer left behind a manual that says, this is how we did it. But that gap isn't the end of the investigation. It's the start of one, and piecing together the physical evidence left in the stone itself points toward a technique that changes the entire equation. The German Archaeological Institute, which has excavated at Baalbek for decades, and mapped the quarry and found the channels masons cut around each block before separating it from the bedrock, a method well documented elsewhere in Roman construction. From there, engineers studying the site point to an approach the Romans are independently known to have used at smaller scales. Instead of dragging stone directly over ground, teams laid down timber tracks and used wooden sledges, and with rollers or greased skids to cut friction dramatically. Modern engineering estimates suggest that with enough rope, enough timber, and potentially thousands of coordinated laborers, and moving an 800-ton block on a gentle downhill or level grade falls within what organized ancient labor could plausibly achieve. Not through some lost technology, but through sheer disciplined manpower multiplied by clever mechanics. It's a less mysterious answer than legend prefers, and a far more human one. And here's where the story usually gets hijacked. Because a gap in the written record is exactly the kind of space folklore rushes to fill. For centuries, a local tradition in the region attributed the stones to giants, sometimes linked to Cain in the aftermath of Abel's murder, sometimes to legendary kings compelled to build for demons under Solomon's command. It's easy to dismiss that as superstition, but it's worth understanding why the legend took hold. Confronted with a feat of engineering that defied ordinary explanation, people reached for the only category of cause big enough to match it: the supernatural. That instinct isn't foolish. It's human. The mistake is treating the legend as a rival theory to archaeology, and rather than as evidence of just how astonishing the real achievement actually was. Strip away the giants, and what's left is arguably more impressive. Ordinary people, using ropes, timber, and coordinated labor, is solving a physics problem that would humble a modern construction crew. Because here's the twist worth sitting with. We tend to imagine ancient technology as primitive, working up in a straight line toward our own. But the deeper you look, the less that story holds. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera pulled a corroded lump of bronze from a Roman-era shipwreck, and for decades it sat in a museum. Unremarkable. It wasn't until X-ray and CT imaging in the 2000s revealed what was hidden inside. Over 30 interlocking bronze gears, forming a mechanical calculator that could predict eclipses and track the cycles of the moon and planets with genuine astronomical accuracy. Nothing of comparable mechanical complexity is known to have existed again for well over 1,000 years. And one device, pulled from one shipwreck, quietly overturned an entire assumption about the pace of ancient innovation. That's the pattern worth noticing across all of this. Not that ancient people had secret advanced technology, but that they had something we chronically underestimate. Extraordinary patience, extraordinary organization, and a willingness to solve enormous problems using nothing but wood, rope, bronze, and human coordination at a scale we rarely attempt today. The people who quarried the stones at Baalbek weren't following a blueprint we've lost. They were almost certainly iterating, learning through generations of smaller-scale construction what worked, refining it, and then, at some point, deciding to try it at a scale nobody had attempted before. And most of that process left no written record because it didn't need one. It lived in the hands of the masons who did the work, and when that knowledge wasn't written down, it simply died with them, which is the real answer this investigation has been building toward. It isn't that ancient people achieved something beyond human capability. It's that the specific, practical know-how behind these achievements, the exact sequence of decisions, the accumulated trial and error, was never preserved. We are separated from the builders of Baalbek not by some unbridgeable gulf of ability, but by an ordinary human failure. Nobody wrote it down, and eventually, nobody remembered. And multiply that across thousands of years, and every civilization that rose and fell without leaving a manual behind, and the mystery stops looking like evidence of lost superpowers. It starts looking like a mirror. The unfinished stone is still there, in that quarry outside Beirut, half attached to the hillside where it was abandoned 2,000 years ago. Nobody knows exactly why the work stopped. Maybe a temple project was canceled. Maybe the block cracked. Maybe something more ordinary interrupted it entirely. What's certain is that the people who cut it knew things about moving stone that no living person now fully understands, and they took that knowledge with them without ever imagining it would one day feel like magic. The most impossible thing about the ancient world may not be what they built. It may be how much of what they knew simply disappeared without a trace. This is ready to lock. The remaining item is still yours to close out before upload. Verify the 1,650-ton figure, the crane claims, and the Antikythera dating against a primary source, German Archaeological Institute publications, and a museum or peer-reviewed source for the mechanism. Everything else in the structure and wording is solid.